Hey, welcome to the With Parents podcast. My name is Jason Gann. I'm the pastor of kids and family here at Resurrection. So glad you joined us. Today's episode is really going to be powerful. You're going to be inspired as a parent when you think about your kids and you think about youth sports. How is our role as a parent? What about the coach? Why is that important? What happens after the bad game, the moment of defeat? We're going to hear from Matt Williams. Matt Williams played, he was the number one catcher in high school for the state. He grew up in Michigan. Then he went on to play for Duke. He passed up scholarships at Yale, Stanford to play for Duke. He was the freshman first-round catcher. He was drafted by the Cubs into the farm team. And then, you know what? His knees started to give out on him a little bit because the catchers take a lot of, but he's got great insight as a player in both amateur and professional world. He also was an owner, manager of different youth sport businesses, club teams, showcase business and industry, and he happens to be a dad of, you ready for this? A 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and one on the way. So he's about to coach his oldest child, his son, in his first year of T-ball. He's got some great insights for us parents on what he got from his parents, on the industry, and what to do in those defeating moments. Let's tune in. Hey, welcome again. I'm here with Matt Williams. Matt is a friend, but Matt has quite a credential sheet that is really important to what we're talking about today. So I want to run through a few of these and just kind of get your commentary about this. Matt, you were an athlete. You were the best catcher in the state of Michigan when you were in high school. That's quite a title, best in the state. You had opportunities to go to Ivy League schools, Yale, Stanford. You said, no way, I'm going to go play for Duke. United Methodist School, just wanted to point that out. But you went to play for Duke, and you started a job there. You were involved with a lot of youth sports in high school. You got prepared for this moment. You get into college baseball. You're a catcher. You're a top D1 catcher in the country. You were playing at Duke. Then you were drafted by the Cubs in 2009. You played 1 year. Admittedly, you said...
my knees hurt.
Started feeling the age of a catcher.
The body started to feel it pretty good.
And I certainly was not a catcher at your level, but I did play a lot of little league catching. I've got the bad knee to prove it. But it does. It wears on the body. And so you said, I gotta look beyond this life as a baseball player. But you're certainly a professional. But not only that. You played, then you also owned and were a part of the business of youth sports. So you were a professional in the area. You started a club here in the Kansas City area, a baseball club for 8 to 18 years. You've been a private instructor for thousands of hours. You still do that on the side, I'm sure. And you started a showcase company, which is a lot like NFL Combine Day, so people could see these young athletes. And I love how you said your hope was that they could achieve the dream of college baseball. And I thought that was just cool when you're thinking about helping them achieve their dreams. So we've got you're a player, you're a professional in the business of youth sports, but you're also a father. And that really kind of brings it together. That's the trifecta, right? You and your wife, Kristen, you have 3 kids and...
Another one on the way.
So 4 kids. You're building a baseball team.
We are. Get it? The cleanup hitter is soon to be on deck.
That's awesome. So, and you have boys and girls. So that's just, wow. That's
Braden will be 6 in July, and Ella is 4. Connor he's 2.5, and then baby number 4 will be here in September.
This fall. That's awesome. Well, Matt, as we think about youth sports, this is just such a part of our culture. It just permeates our culture. Just a reminder, I've got a 17 and a 14-year-old daughters. My 14-year-old is in club sports, volleyball. I see this youth sport culture. It's just a part of who we are. And there's a lot of great things about it. Then there's some challenges. And today you're going to share with us really 3 kind of areas. Insights for parents and why the family approach is really important. When it comes... the second kind of idea is around coaching and how to really review, connect with a coach. And then the third idea of what to do if they don't make it as a professional athlete. So that's what we're going to dig into. So first question, Matt, just tell us about your relationship with your parents, what you've taken from that, what you've learned, and what insight you'd give to parents about that role.
Absolutely. I've done a lot of reflecting looking back because, obviously being a baseball player and then working in the industry, owning a club, working in showcases, working with parents and players that are, my parents are my child, but helping them try to get to that next level and achieve their dream and accomplish their goals. So I've seen it from that angle. Then now being a parent myself, even though my kids are younger, I've really spent a lot of time thinking about my relationship with my parents because I was fortunate in that I had a really strong relationship with my parents. I had two parents at home. I was just blessed in that way. And it's interesting to me because we had a very intense relationship around baseball, but I've been trying to, as a parent myself now, like trying to dig into what kept us close, like what kept us on the right side of the healthy line instead of, going in a negative direction. And the thing that comes to mind, this is kind of a meta narrative because it happened really frequently, but there were so many dinners where we'd be having dinner and my dad had this like pen and paper day timer that allegedly kept his schedule, but really he had my batting average, like, calculated by hand.
Sure.
And he would know exactly, like we'd have my goals. I need to hit 450. I need to hit 500, whatever the goals were. He'd have it calculated to know exactly how many hits I needed per game, per tournament. At any point in the season, he'd have it all calculated. And, in baseball, your batting average is really important for awards and accolades and everything. So we'd be sitting around at the dinner and looking back on it, like, honestly, there was times where it was pretty much an argument. Like, it was intense conversations. But what's so interesting to me is I always wanted more. Like, there were times where, the temperature rose pretty high and we kind of had to, like, hit the pause button. Sure. But there was never a doubt in my mind that the next time we had dinner, because we just had dinners as much as possible around our dinner table, that I was going to dive right back in. I wanted to talk baseball. And so as I think about that, I think what's really important and what I hope I can do for my kids, because I know my parents did it for me, is my parents and I were bonded over something that really mattered to me, which was baseball. And my parents were very intense and far from perfect, and everybody had their moments. My dad was not afraid to yell at an umpire, or he sometimes would walk like down the foul line because he was just so upset with what was happening. He had to like separate himself. So I'm not saying that they're perfect, but the key thing that I have been reflecting on and want to mention today is my parents followed my lead in the passion. So it was intense and there were arguments and it was far from perfect. But the key thing for me is that the desire to play college baseball and maybe someday professional baseball, that burned white hot within me from a really early age on. Like, I've asked my parents and some other coaches and stuff, like, because if I'm trying to help a kid get where I got to, I want to understand what helped me have success, not so they can copy and paste me, but so I can learn the lessons from that. And the feedback is from my parents and other coaches that I was just more serious about it early on than a lot of my peers.
Okay.
And so where I reflect on that and where I think there's a parenting lesson in there that I try to remind myself of for my parents, and hopefully we can share with any parents watching or listening, is that I led the way in terms of the intensity of this driving passion. So my parents came alongside me, but there was never a doubt that I wanted baseball for myself. And that was a really key ingredient to us having this really deep, profound bond that literally went from, and started in Southeast Michigan, and then it kept us feel pretty close from Michigan to North Carolina, and then from Michigan out in Boise, Idaho, I was playing pro ball. Like, it kind of closed the physical distance because we had this unique bond together. And seeing it on the other side as being in the industry, working with parents and players, when the parent tries to project something that they want onto their player more than the player, him or herself, wants, it really is not a recipe for a positive result. It's probably not going to bring people closer together. If anything, it might start pushing people apart. And so I was thinking about parenting and my relationship with my parents. Like, it was intense and it was awesome, and they were never afraid. The other thing I want to mention too is they were never afraid to say that I love you and I'm proud of you. So that's good. I mean, my dad would drive me nuts sometimes because he's like, all right, son, you need 4 hits this weekend to hit your mark, and I'd be like, Dad, not right now. But underneath all of that, there was never a doubt that, like, my dad loved me and was proud of me, and same with my mom. And so that was like the foundation that allowed us to kind of argue over the performance, kind of surface level stuff, because there was never an insecurity about my parents loved me and they wanted this goal for me because I wanted it for myself. And I think that's what really helped us really go after something that was big and hard, but also like stay close and healthy in the midst of that.
Man, that's well said. I loved how you said, follow my lead. So looking for the child, the student, the teenager to really lead in their passion for the sport and really getting behind them. Certainly pushing them, right? I heard you say that. You appreciated the competitive push from your dad, the dinner table, healthy. And I loved how you said bonding over something that is really important. So it was like, tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm guessing baseball was the overlying conversational topic,
Hmm.
but I bet the bond grew deeper, and so I just want to get your reflections on that.
Yeah, because I use the language bonding over something that matters intentionally in a general sense, because my dad was a high school football player, and my mom was a classically trained musician. So
Yeah.
outside of an uncle that allegedly was really good, I don't know, that there was no baseball connection. So like my aptitude and interest in the game of baseball is what drew my parents into that. And so something that mattered to me deeply was baseball, because there's just something it's even today, it's hard for me to put into words. It's just a deep seated love for the game, and it's a love as a verb, not as a feeling. Because there were moments where I'm like, I'm done with this game, but deep down, it's like, it's something I really wanted. And so that's something that matters. So baseball was something that I identified that I really wanted. But the other thing, too, that my parents really helped with was we quickly identified baseball as a potential vehicle to help me get into a school and set me up for, future. Because I was a good student, not a great student, no honors classes, I had like a 3.8, but nothing special whatsoever, nothing that could even remotely get me into Stanford, Yale, or Duke as a student.
Right.
But baseball was a ticket that could help me get into an institution that I otherwise couldn't have. And so when my parents were thinking about me and they were just learning what mattered to me, I wanted to go to a really good school and I wanted to play baseball. So that's something that mattered, because they saw that as my goal in the future that they wanted for me. But it was something coming from inside of me. That's something that mattered, that brought us closer, because it was like we were united in a common purpose to see how far I could go pursuing this goal.
That's cool. I love that. And I think that's important. And I'm excited to hear more about when Braden, who's now 5 and about to start T-ball.
Yep.
And then
Yes.
now that you're in your dad's role
Yep.
and what because, it's amazing. There's moments, and I know some of you feel this, right, where we become our parents. We do.
Yeah.
There's moments where you just recognize, oh my gosh, I just became my father, my mother.
Yep.
It's just part of how we are, right? It's part of how we're designed. So I was thinking about this. You had mentioned in our kind of prep work over this interview, the importance of your kid's coach.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us why that's important and what advice you have when it comes to your child's coach.
Yeah. So quick backstory, kind of what led me to go into youth sports and youth baseball as a career for almost a decade was I needed a summer job. And so I just literally started calling around saying, hey, I'm a former baseball player. Can I coach your team this summer? Make whatever I was going to make to help make some money over the summer. And so I started coaching, had no idea what I was doing. Absolutely no clue. I had played at a high level, but coaching and playing are very different. And something struck me, though. About halfway through the year, I recognized that the players really paid attention to what I said, and how I responded to them really mattered. And I felt like I had no clue what I was doing in terms of writing a lineup and defining strategy and all these things you think about as a coach, but you don't necessarily always think about as a player. But yet I was having a positive impact on these players, and I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, this is really interesting. Like, this whole coaching thing, like, how you treat your players really matters. And then the motivational part, but also just the reality is I'd look across the dugout and I'd look across the field at other dugouts, and not every coach treated their players the way that I would want to treat my players. And I started recognizing that my players responded to me in this way, and other coaches were treating their players and their players responding differently. And I was like, there's something in this coaching thing. And so fast forward, I kept coaching and, working, whether it's individual private lessons or starting a baseball club or, coaching a team, just kind of one team. I continually experienced how important a coach is, because one of the things that I think about all the time is, like, everybody's going to remember a coach for better or for worse. Right. So whether it's a sports or an activity or whatever it is, a coach figure, quote unquote, everybody's going to remember them. And so I started to experience that as a coach and wanted to be a good coach. But then I spent 4 years working with a nonprofit called Community for Coaches. Yeah. And our whole thing was coaching with purpose. So we would try to help coaches define their purpose as a coach, and to use their platform for good and not for bad, and to see the dramatic impact that a coach can have no matter what. But then if you help a coach to think through what is their purpose as a coach and to intentionally use that platform for good, to see how that coach transformed, to see how teams transformed and players transformed and lives were transformed. It was really, really impactful. And so as a parent now, I can't help myself. Like, I'm going to coach my kids and whatever I can just because it's in me. But one thing, because in the industry, if you're a baseball club owner, or whatever, the crazy parents, quote unquote, it gets thrown around a lot. Like, parents can be a challenging aspect of the youth sports industry. But one thing I do absolutely think parents should be very adamant about is who is coaching your kid. And not as much on like the X's and O's or, do you step this way or that way or your swing mechanics, but like the character, the value, the example that coach, him or her, is setting for your son or daughter, I fundamentally believe is far more important than any tactical skill or drill they're ever going to learn, because the impact of that coach is going to last far beyond any sort of experience on the field. And it's going to have a ripple effect on that young person's life, again, for good or for bad. And so I think coaching is absolutely essential, and parents, if done, with love and grace in the right way, can go a long way in ensuring that their kids are playing for coaches that care about their son or daughter as the person and not just the player or the paycheck or the reputation of the club or anything like that.
That's well said. 'Cause, I mean, that's part of what's great about sports is you learn people. You learn how to be with people. You learn how to interact with people. You learn how to work together as a team. And so character is a big part of the draw to youth sports, right? And the coach is critical in that role, just like the parent is, right? And my favorite quote in life is, example is not the best way of teaching. It's the only way of teaching. And so I always try to say that in my mind all the time as a parent. But that's what I'm hoping for in a coach. I think we all should hope that in a coach that's influencing our child, developing their character. So thanks for that. That's really good. I thought about how coaches can build you up or tear you down. Like you said, they'll remember, for better or for worse, you're going to remember your coach. So you're going to make an impact as a coach. So maybe this is to the coaches, like, choose your impact, because it's either going to be positive or negative. But they'll remember it forever, right?
Yeah, and one thing I know we talked about before, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned is there's this story of to me, the epitome of a coach is somebody that cares about the best interest of the kid above any scoreboard, above any result. It's just like, what does this player need, and what's in the best interest for them?
You're going to tell the Coach Dale story?
Yeah, Coach Rumberger story. Yeah, so there's two elements of this that I think personify how important a coach can be. The first thing is, Dale Rumberger, Coach Rumberger, I would go to him for private catching lessons when I was in high school. And this was junior, senior year. So I was extremely advanced on my way to college. And the first thing that I'll never forget about Coach Rumberger is that he recognized what I needed, not necessarily what he thought my dad wanted or what he thought I wanted. Because I would show up to an hour-long lesson that wasn't cheap. And so I know it was not nothing for my dad to pay for this. And we would sit there and we would talk for the first 45 minutes. And I remember clear as day, my dad's kind of looking like kind of sideways, like, what am I paying for? Like, what is happening right now? And in the moment, like, I was engaged because he was a good coach, but I thought it was interesting too. I'm like, we're talking for a long time. And then we do like 10 or 15 minutes of drills. He'd give me a couple pointers that honestly I kind of already knew, because the skills and drills I had down. I was an advanced catcher at my age. But reflecting back, what I realized is he recognized that I didn't need more physical reps. I didn't need more skills and drills. I needed the why. I needed the mental foundation of, what is the purpose of blocking a ball? What is the purpose of receiving it in this way? What are you actually trying to do when you throw the ball down to second base? And interestingly, Coach Rumberger couldn't have known this, but when I got to Duke, like, I was the starting catcher as a freshman, but our coaching staff, extremely accomplished, not a catcher on the staff. So I effectively was kind of having to coach myself in the ACC at Duke, and thanks to Coach Rumberger, I understood the principle of what I'm trying to accomplish as a catcher physically. And that allowed me to make adjustments, to learn, to grow, and to, in some ways, coach myself at a really high important level as I'm fighting for a starting job as a freshman in ways that if it was just an hour worth of skills and drills that I already knew how to do, probably wouldn't have helped me that way. So that's the first thing with Coach Rumberger is he really took the time to figure out what I needed. And then that's what he focused on with his coaching. And then the other part, this is a story I'll never forget. And it shows that a coach should care about a player regardless of the scoreboard and the competition, which is important, but secondary. So I played for Northville High School. Coach Rumberger actually coached a high school in our conference, a rival conference called Plymouth-Salem. Okay. And so we're playing baseball, and I'm a catcher. And if there's a runner on first and it's a ground ball, the catcher's supposed to back up first base in case it's a bad throw. And so we're playing Plymouth-Salem. I don't know, it's some random third inning. Rumberger was competitive. He was fiery. He would get after his guys. He wanted to beat Northville, even though he cared about me as a person.
Sure.
So we're playing, and it's runner on first, ground ball. I don't leave home plate. I just got lazy, just decided I didn't want to hustle that play. And so I'm sitting there, we get the out. It's not a bad throw or anything. So really probably nobody noticed. I'm not even hearing, but then all of a sudden, somebody's yelling at me from the dugout. They're saying, Williams, you're better than that. You're better than that. You get your butt down there next time. You're better than that. And I'm like, okay, like Coach Newman, my coach, he's yelling at me. And then I'm like, wait a second. That's coming from the other dugout. It's not my coach that was yelling at me. It was Coach Rumberger coaching against me that recognized that I was slacking. He knew that I was better than that. He wanted me to be better than that. And so he was literally in the middle of a high school game. He was yelling at me for not hustling enough against his own team.
Has there been a day in the rest of your career where you didn't think about not backing up first?
Oh, no.
He didn't come into your mind?
No, not long after that. It became my goal to beat the batter runner down to first base. I was going to.
It was ingrained in, right?
It was.
The character was developed.
Yes, it was.
Of the accountability.
Yeah, and it was this odd sense of kind of embarrassing because I knew he was right. But it was also really satisfying because this man that really cared about me above the name on the jersey and who we were kind of he cared about me enough to coach me and make me better. And I'll just never forget that. And that's
for better or for worse.
For better or for worse. Right. Yeah.
And you remember it. It's ingrained in who you are. It's a character trait now because of that moment.
Yeah.
Right? That's the impact a coach can have.
Yeah, that's just a couple snippets of what I think the epitome of a coach is in my experience and why I think as parents, are the coaches of our kids. If I want my kid to swing this way, but some baseball coach wants to swing a different way, I'm not going to meddle in that. But if I start to sniff some character issues or I don't like the example, that's when I'm going to get really concerned as a parent because I've seen a lot both directions, good and bad, in terms of influence and impact, and the coaches really, really matter.
That's good. That's well said. My takeaway is, even though I'm not the coach of my child, I'm the parent of my child, I'm always the parent, and that means I need to be paying attention to how the coach is coaching my child, right? There needs to be a connection there, a communication. One of the takeaways I took from Dr. Jacobs in an earlier interview was that to ask the coach what their purpose is, what their goals are, their mission. So to really understand where the why behind the coach, so that you understand, and the coach understands your why as a parent and why this is important and character matters. And so thanks for that. That's good stuff, Matt. Kind of brings me to the third idea. As we are talking about youth sports, and kids all around our culture are dreaming of being the next LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Bobby Witt Jr., right? Yep. Whatever their sport is, Simone Biles, they are dreaming. That's me. And we want them to dream, right? It's good to dream. What do you say to that pathway when the reality kind of sets in? When we think about youth sports and kids' futures?
I think this perspective is really important, and to put it lovingly but very, very directly, is the chances of any kid in youth sports making it to college, let alone professional sports, is astronomically low. So just thinking about my experience as a player, I was fortunate in that I had a lot of resources around me, loving parents, mentors that helped me, a really strong work ethic, and just some aptitude to be good, because that's sometimes you either got it or you don't in terms of your physical capacity. So I played on a team that was extraordinarily talented. We had our starting 9 players when I was 17 and 18 were all Division I players. Wow. 4 of us, including myself, got drafted. I'm the only delinquent that didn't make the big leagues. The other 3 guys all made the big leagues. Pound for pound, quote unquote, that's the best team I've ever played on. And so experiencing that as a player and reflecting back on it, and then being in the industry, coaching 8 to 18-year-olds, and then also the showcase industry was also interesting because we'd travel the country putting on these showcase events, trying to help kids achieve their dream of playing college baseball and doing recruiting seminars and getting the coaches there to watch them and helping parents and players. The facts remain that it's a worthy purpose. It's something that matters to the kid and to the family, and it can draw you together. But the chances, if your only goal with a youth sport is to get the college scholarship or to play pro or to have some dream of your kid being on ESPN, then I honestly believe, lovingly, that's the wrong perspective because youth sports can be about so much more than that. It can bond families. It can create memories that last a lifetime. It can teach character. It can teach work ethic. It can teamwork. It can provide college opportunities. There's real opportunity there, but just use baseball as an example because it's the sport I'm familiar with. There's something like 400,000 high school baseball players in the United States at any given year. 7% are going to play college baseball at any level. That's junior college, NAIA, D3, D2, D1. And so 7% out of 400,000. I'm not a math guy. My Duke education failed me with that one. But that's not a lot. But that's 7%. That's college at any level. And so when we start thinking College World Series and the stuff we see on TV and the D1 aspirations and all that kind of stuff, the percentages get really small, really, really fast. And so I share that just from not a Debbie Downer perspective, but from the perspective of youth sports are incredible. Like I spent almost a decade in the industry and absolutely loved it. But the right perspective is key because if as parents and as a community, if we are using youth sports to build up young people and to teach life lessons and to equip them to go out and to learn and grow and add value as future adults, then youth sports is incredible. And it's a platform that honestly can teach lessons unlike just about anything else. But if our priorities get out of order, then that's when it starts to cause division and it starts to push kids away and separate just cause conflict in families and create an unhealthy environment that's not good for anybody. So I think our perspective as parents, and my son, like I said, he's been playing soccer and now he's in T-ball. So I'm just dipping my toes in the coaching my kid, watching my kid play sport waters, but just being in it for 10 years and working with thousands of players and parents literally all over the country. I just think the perspective matters because if your kid never plays an inning or a down or a second of a collegiate sport, but that sport brought you closer together, it was something that mattered, it bonded you, and it taught the kid lessons, then it's worth every penny and every moment.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. That's a good perspective for me to hear because I tend to look at like, oh, this is costing this much in dollars and this much in time. But then also I see how engaged my daughter is in youth sports. I see how engaged we are as a family. It does create beautiful high moments and beautiful low moments and how we manage that as parents and as a family. And so I know she's learning life lessons that will serve her well in whatever career and in her own family in years ahead. And that reminds me, because I don't want to miss this opportunity, because you shared with me a story of like when you said your dad kind of got it right. Dr. Jacobs on the earlier interview I did, famous kind of sports psychologist, talked about the car ride home and how critical the car ride home is. And you had a moment of what that should and could look like to help a player in a difficult moment after the game. Tell that story.
So I was pretty sure I was 14. It was 8th grade. It was definitely middle school. I'm pretty sure it was 8th grade. And we're at this tournament, and to us, we're a fairly competitive team, and I'm one of the best players on the team, one of the best hitters. So I'm in the 3-hole or the 4-hole in the lineup, and we're playing in this game, in the championship game, and it's bases loaded. We're down by 1, 2 outs, kind of this childhood Sandlot opportunity here.
This is it. Big
And
moment.
it is, and it's the right guy. The bases are loaded. Like, this is going to be my shining moment as a 14-year-old, because this was all that mattered to me in the moment. And so pitcher comes, first pitch, fastball, swung at an inside fastball, shouldn't have swung at. If I picture a bat, I hit the ball about 3 inches above my hands. Just the weakest possible pop-up to the pitcher you could imagine.
Oh, man.
Game over. And, again, perspective being I'm a 14-year-old, middle school, insecure, all of those kinds of things. And so this was devastating. Yeah. I hated the way my teammates were looking at me, the disappointment, because the parents, everybody's going nuts because, like, I was the guy that was going to, do this and get us our trophy and blah, blah, blah.
Got to be the hero.
I was all set up, and it was a miserable failure on the field. Like, it was just a bad way to go out. I'd almost rather struck out. So I'm devastated in the moment, because in my world, this was huge. And so the car ride home, we had about an hour and a half drive because it was a relatively local tournament. And my dad just nailed the car ride home perfectly, because he sensed where I was at, which I think is a huge important thing. Like, sure, he was, there's dynamics to being a parent on a team, and who knows what he was thinking. But the first thing is he recognized where I was, and I was very upset. And so he spent most of the car ride home just there in silence. Like, that's not typical for us. I mean, I referenced our dinner table conversations before. Like,
right.
We had more of a tendency to be lively and kind of go after it. Yeah. But in that moment, he recognized that this stung deeper than your average failure or defeat in my world at the time. And so he just was quiet. And this is where it gets kind of funny, but also meaningful. Is I was in middle school, and I had this poetry project due like soon afterwards. So I'm driving home, just really upset in my world, and I write this poem called "Defeat," trying to express my feelings to
healthy outlet.
Yeah, healthy outlet. I had this like poetry thing then for middle school, and there's no way that poem was any good. But my dad told me it was the best thing he'd ever read, and.
Well done, Dad.
Yeah, well, because what he did there was he was there. He was just with me in that moment. He didn't try to force anything. He saw me trying to process and do something with these feelings. And then, again, there's no way it was good, but he told me it was the best thing he'd ever read. And what he did, what he showed me is, like, he kind of helped me turn a negative into a positive, because I was still really upset about the way the game played out, but he was able to encourage me and to lift me up over this, assignment, and him just encouraged me in that. And like I said, I think what strikes me about that is it's just a moment where my dad got the car ride home really right, because, in the grand scheme of things, is 14-year-old baseball, that big of a deal? No. But what he did a great job of is he recognized how much it mattered to me and my perspective in my world at that moment. And he did a whole lot of good by saying almost nothing, which can be really challenging. I recognize how challenging that can be, even as a young parent of young kids myself.
Sure.
But that was a story that I'll never forget. And I've tried to emulate that, as a coach, with a player who just struck out to end the game. Sometimes just being there is the most important thing, and looking for a way to spin, to turn the negative into the positive. That's an example of when my dad really, really crushed it with a car ride home that brought us closer together rather than potentially, creating separation between us.
Sure, man, that's beautiful, Matt. It's an inspiration to us all. And also, here's what I would say to parents: sometimes you're going to blow that car ride, but you get another chance, because your kids are always your kids, and so you can get better. So if you've had that moment, and right now you're just thinking, "Gosh, I blew it. I should have done that the last time that happened," there'll be another car ride, and there'll be another moment, and you're always.
And here's, since you mentioned that, it just brings a thought to mind. There were plenty of post-game phone calls or car rides that I know my dad didn't get right.
Yeah.
It just the odds of it. I just know our relationship,
Sure,
right?
Sure.
I remember this one.
That's the one.
So to your point, like, as I'm trying to prepare myself as a parent with kids that are going to be in coaching all kinds or playing all that stuff, like, yeah, we're going to mess it up as parents, but that's the one I remember, not the ones that my dad necessarily didn't do as well. And I think that can speak to the power of of when you do get it right and you connect with your kid in a really powerful way, it goes deep, and it can help for those moments where we need some extra grace because we just didn't get it right.
Well, and I'll tell you, in those moments, I will pray quietly. And I want to encourage you to do that, parents. I'll just pray, Lord, help me with the words. Lord, help me with the words. A lot of times, it still might not give me the exact words of what I should say, but it helps to center my heart. So my heart's in the right place no matter what I say. And so I know that's been helpful. So that'd be a kind of a key piece of advice. So Matt, thanks for being with us. I want to say this to everybody out there, right? So he might not have made the big leagues, but he did make it onto big ministry. That's my joke. Matt's actually on our team here at Resurrection. He serves in our marketing and engagement department. He's a great brother in ministry, really helping make a difference in our community, thinking about how we reach and connect with people, especially young families and parents. And I was just one final question, because if you're watching this podcast, there was a game coming up, and he is currently coaching Pastor Adam Hamilton, our senior pastor, on preparation to throw out the first pitch at a Royals game. How's that going, Matt?
I will say it feels like the most high-stakes pitching lesson ever. But the good news is he's hitting the target way more than he's not. So
that's good.
We got something to work with, and we'll keep practicing until we get there.
All right, that's good. I'm glad to hear that as Pastor Adam represents us all. We're so glad you joined us today for the podcast. Hope this is helping and inspiring to you. Share it with some friends, and we'll see you soon.